guys, it's Ashley from theawakenstate.net, and today we're going to talk about another awakening tip. So, today let's talk about the ego and what the ego really is and why it actually serves us rather than hinders us like most of us think. I'm of the mentality where we don't need to rid our ego. We don't need to shame our ego. We do not need to hide ourselves from the ego. We do not need to be ignoring the ego, bypassing the ego, and so forth. Because at the end of the day, the ego is not bad. It is more about how are we choosing to view the negative energy. So what do I really mean by that? Well, our ego is our resistance to alignment. So what we have here is our ego is basically our identity, and it is our framework. And as we have this framework, this is basically like our past identity. This is the identity that you created as you were growing up. Usually 0 to 7 is when we install all these beliefs and habits and concepts of what makes us a human, basically. And our ego is the identity encompassing that. So we have our identity that serves us as we grow and grow and grow and grow. And each time that we are ready to expand, we are faced with our ego, and then that creates the resistance. And we're either in the state of resisting the present moment, or we are flowing into alignment or flowing in alignment with the present moment. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because our ego is there to serve us. So what does that really mean? Is that our ego is causing us to resist the present moment, but it is there as a teacher to show you what you need to work on to get back into alignment. And it's really interesting because we basically live in a self-correcting universe, and our intention is to always align, like flow back into alignment. And when we're choosing to not flow in alignment, our like, some call it critter brain, reptilian brain, whatever you want to call it, is basically pushing and pulling and pushing and pulling because we are afraid to expand our identity. And this is fascinating because we start to see, as we go through like the dark night of the soul and we go through these massive growth periods, it's because that we face that ego, that dark night, that shadow period, that we are literally crossing a threshold into the new identity. And I talk a lot about this, and I think it's the Symptoms of Awakening series. But the main emphasis here is our ego is showing us the lessons we need to see to expand and grow. And this really is created from how we see ourselves. And how we see ourselves is through all those conditioning patterns that we grew up with. So if you want to start elevating and expanding outside of the ego, you're literally crossing a threshold into the new identity. Now, if this is the case, then we begin to see that our ego isn't bad at all. We should not be ridding ourselves of ego. It's a very natural, normal part of our human instinct. And we can't deny our humanness. We can't deny our body. We can't deny who we truly are as a human being. But we can see this as a tool into how we can move forward and how we can grow faster and how we can see that it's merely a threshold towards our desires. because the fear is literally the catalyst towards our desire. And this is fascinating because our ego is going to keep teaching you the lesson until you're able to push through and cross the threshold. And this is what a lot happens during the Kundalini awakening process is we are literally at this state of we feel we're in an old identity, but after we start to awaken, we're no longer able to like we just want to like bust out of the shell. We're just done. We're done with the old paradigm. We're done with the old perceptions. We're done with the old conditioning habits. And so what we do is we create this like very fascinating like erupture. And I feel like that's the only way to explain it is it feels like you're literally like this ball. And then as the ball, it grows bigger during your awakening, you literally just expand. And through that expansion is when you start having those knowledge bombs. You start having lots of like awareness show up. You start talking to higher self. You start being more open towards possibilities and truths, and higher truths become more of a natural birthright. And this is all because of the ego. So when we have that dark night of the soul, it's also really teaching us to bust out of that shell. And it's a bit like the concept of like the chrysalis, because the chrysalis awakens rebirth. And this is what's so cool, because you start to see that the ego is actually your friend. The ego is a teacher, and the ego is there to be the catalyst towards your spiritual expansion. And the best thing we can do as spiritual beings is we need to accept our ego. We need to accept our judgment. We need to accept everything. But rather than basking in it, feeding in it, and getting almost to this point of like beating ourselves up about it, or trying to get rid of it, or trying to push it down, or whatever may be, we need to start questioning, why is it coming up? How is it serving me? What is it doing? What does this really mean? Where is this coming up from? Because our ego is literally our past. So all about healing the karmic line is really about healing our past. And this is how our ego is teaching us, because our ego is showing us what we need to see, how we need to see it, and how our awareness shifts is literally the catalyst of fear into love, fear into desire, fear into abundance, fear into prosperity, fear into, I don't know. You get the picture. It's literally just how our standards are built, basically. And we start to see that everything is connected, and that illusion of separation is merely the threshold into our desire, into our acceptance, into our love, into healing. And that's what it's really about. So I'm doing something new, and I'm going to start doing more awakening tips. So if you have any topics or suggestions, I invite you to leave them below in the comments and subscribe and tell your friends.